Hi everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to go deep into a topic that I know is going to resonate with so many of you, because whether it's happened to you personally or to someone you love, we've all had experiences where our health comes into question. Maybe you've had a test result that didn't look the way you wanted it to. Maybe a doctor has given you a diagnosis with a name that sounds heavy or frightening or limiting. Or maybe you've just been feeling off and your body isn't showing up the way you want it to. What I want to share with you today isn't just a new way of looking at these situations, but a complete shift in perspective. A way to actually use these moments as doorways into greater freedom and radiant health and vitality. Because here's the truth. Facts don't have meaning in themselves. This is so important to understand. For example, a medical test result is just numbers on a piece of paper or data in a computer system. That's it. The result itself doesn't tell you what your future is going to be. It doesn't dictate your health. It doesn't mean anything until you give it meaning. And this is the heart of what we're going to explore today. The way you respond to so-called facts, especially about your health, is what actually determines your experience going forwards. It's not the fact in itself. It's not the diagnosis. It's not the test result. It's your assumption about what it means that causes the effect. It's never the fact itself. Let's slow this down. Say you get a blood test and it shows that some measurement isn't within the normal range. Now you might look at that and straight away the mind wants to run with it. It wants to assign unwanted meaning. It might say, oh no, this means I have something seriously wrong with me. This means I'm going to have to be on medication forever. This means my health is declining. And in that instant, you've taken something neutral, a piece of data, and you've infused it with meaning that points towards a specific unwanted future. But here's the beautiful part. You could just as easily choose a completely different meaning. You could assume that test was a mistake. My body's actually fine. Or there's a perfectly logical reason why that measurement looked that way on that day, but it doesn't mean anything long term. Or my body is always moving towards balance, and this result is just part of the process of my healing. Same fact, different assumption. And the assumption is what generates the events of your life, not the fact itself. When you really let this sink in, it's the most liberating thing in the world, because it means nothing is ever set in stone. Nothing about your health is being dictated by something outside of you. Nothing is final unless you decide that it is. The future is completely open, always. Right now, in this moment, your health story is unwritten. You get to pick the way it goes by choosing your assumptions. Now, most of us, most of the time, don't realize we're doing this. We take facts and we automatically give them negative meaning. But what if, instead of doing that, you start to consciously assume something different, something that serves you, something that leads to vitality, something that leads to freedom? That is where your power lies. Now, I can already hear some people saying, but Alison, aren't we supposed to be realistic? Aren't we supposed to look at the facts? And here's the thing. Being realistic doesn't mean you have to accept every unwanted assumption that pops up. Sure, in daily life, it's useful to accept certain things as fact because you know they always happen this way, and so you expect them to happen that way in the future. Like, for example, if you throw a ball in the air, you know that it's going to come back down. That's how gravity works. It's fine to assume that. It's not a problem. It's actually helpful to know that things operate in this way. So it's good to assume that this is how it works. But when it comes to facts or laws or rules that are not beneficial, You don't want to blindly let realism trap you into assumptions that aren't serving you. Because realism, in the way most people use it, really just means assume the worst because that's what other people believe. But you're not other people. You know that you're the one creating all of this. And so when you notice that you've got an assumption in place that is dictating that you are now forced to face an unwanted future because of this fact that has showed up, then it's time to remind yourself that you are the one deciding that this is how things work. And if you don't want things to work this way, then it's time to stop using your power against yourself and to let go of that rule that this is how things work and decide that one fact showing up today doesn't mean that you're doomed to live with something unwanted for the rest of your life. It's time to remember that your body is perfectly capable of healing, regardless of what any supposed authority or expert on the subject might have to say about that. Now let's look specifically at disease or the diagnosis of a disease. When someone tells you that you have a disease, it feels so final. It feels like a label being stamped on you. This is who you are now. But actually, all it is a moment, a crossroads. The label itself isn't powerful. The diagnosis isn't powerful. What's powerful is your assumption about what it means. Do you assume this means my body is broken and I'm going to get worse? Or do you assume this is a temporary experience, my body's already healing and I'm moving into radiant health? Whichever assumption you choose, that is what will play out. Now, I'm not saying you have to deny what's happening in the moment. If your body is showing symptoms, that's your current experience. But it doesn't have to be your future. The future isn't dictated by the current facts. The future is dictated by your assumptions. And this brings us to the heart of this video, trusting the process. When you've been given a diagnosis or you're dealing with unwanted symptoms, the temptation is to fight, to push, to try to force your body to get better, or on the other side, to despair and give up. But what I want you to feel into is this. Your body isn't your enemy. Your body is an expression of your higher self. And it's always responding to whatever you're choosing, knowingly or unknowingly. It's not like it's set to go in an unwanted direction and you need to fight against that and make it go where you want it to go. It's simply taking the setting that you have set it to, which is either to produce health or to produce disease. And it's conforming with that. It doesn't matter what reason you're using to make that choice. If some test result or some authority has told you that you are now doomed to live with a certain disease, and you accepted that because you trust that this authority is an expert on the subject and knows what they're saying, and so you bought into the idea that this means that you now have to put up with this disease, then it's you buying into that is causing the disease to persist, not any current facts. And similarly, if you have some current symptoms and you're convinced that these symptoms mean that you're going to have to suffer indefinitely, then you will cause that to be true because your body is always responding to what you're setting the outcome to. It doesn't matter what logic or reasoning you're using to get to the conclusion that this is what's happening. Whatever you're convinced is happening is what will play out as fact. But equally, just like you can use this power that you have against yourself, you can right now, in this moment, realize what you've been doing and redirect your whole trajectory going forwards right this instant, simply by choosing to assume differently. And when you make that new choice, you then need to trust the process. You need to let go of trying to micromanage every step. You stop needing proof right this second. You stop looking at every symptom and saying, see, this means it's not working. Instead, you lean into the knowing that radiant health is your natural state, that your body knows what to do, that healing is already underway, even if you can't see it yet. And this is how you step out of fear and into freedom. Think of it like planting a seed. When you put a seed in the soil, you don't dig it up every day to see if it's sprouting. You trust that it's doing what seeds do. You water it, you give it sunlight, and you allow it to grow. It's the same with your health. When you set the assumption, I am moving into radiant health and vitality, that's like planting the seed. And then you trust the process. You stop digging it up. You stop looking for instant proof. You let it unfold. Now, sometimes symptoms will shift instantly, but sometimes there will be ups and downs. The key is to stay in the knowing that the overall trajectory is towards healing, no matter what you're experiencing and what is happening externally, because that is the assumption that you've chosen. What I want you to really feel is this: your body is always responding to you. Whatever narrative you have going on about your health, you're giving instructions. You're telling your body what story to follow. So when you say, this is incurable, this is hard, your body listens. It takes that as the program. But when you say, I am whole, I'm moving into balance, my body is radiantly alive and knows exactly how to heal, your body listens to that too. It's not about denying symptoms, it's about choosing which assumptions you're going to feed. So how do you actually live this out? Let me give you some practical guidance. First of all, acknowledge the facts. Don't fight against them. Don't try to ignore it. Don't try to pretend that you're not feeling what you're feeling or that the doctor didn't give you that diagnosis. But equally, don't assign negative meaning to what happened. Just keep it strictly to acknowledging the facts. I'm feeling like this right now. The doctor said that I have this disease. Now, this is where you need to be a bit clever with this, and it can take a bit of training and practice to learn how to do this. Because you need to learn to fully acknowledge the facts so that there's no pretense and so that you're not trying to fool yourself into something that you know isn't true. But at the same time, you don't want to let yourself buy into any unwanted meaning. So you absolutely acknowledge the doctor said that I have this disease. And you can even acknowledge I have this disease. But you mustn't buy into, because I have this disease, I am going to have to live with unwanted suffering going forwards. Now you can, if this is what happened, acknowledge that the doctor said that you're going to have to live with unwanted suffering. But here's the key. This is where you own your power. This is where you go, the doctor may have said that I have to live with this, but I actually know better than the doctor how this works. I know that everything is responding to my assumption, and therefore I will only have to live with unwanted suffering if I choose to buy into that. And I definitely don't choose to buy into that. I want a life of health and vitality, thank you very much. So that's what I choose. I definitely don't choose suffering. Now, you don't need to say all this out loud to the doctor. For the most part, it's usually best to keep it to yourself. Because if you start saying it out loud, most probably the doctor will think that you're in denial and will start trying to convince you of how true it is that you're going to have to live with this. And most probably with something that is so fundamental to your well-being, you're probably going to be a little bit wobbly already. And so you don't want to place yourself in a situation where someone is throwing a barrage of confirmation of how true it is that you have to live with the unwanted thing. So in terms of speaking to the experts, you can just nod and say, yes, I understand. And then within yourself, know that you're choosing a very different outcome to the one that they are predicting. Because let me remind you that any authority or expert is someone that you have created from your old unwanted story. And so that is why they are reinforcing the unwanted meaning, because you unknowingly fell into believing that this was true. But now, If you consciously choose differently and you practice bringing yourself back into the desired reality, the one in which you are healing, the one in which everything that is happening is leading you to your desired outcome of being full of health and energy and vitality, then you will cause that reality to become true. And if you're able to keep bringing yourself back to this reality anytime you fall out of it, as many times as necessary, until it becomes your default setting, then eventually the authorities and experts will fall in line with what you're choosing, and they will start confirming what you already knew, that you really are healing, and that you're on a path that is leading you to incredible health and vitality. There are countless stories of people who have done this. People who were given terminal diagnosis and then lived decades longer. People who were told they would never recover, but they did. What made the difference wasn't the facts. It was their refusal to let the facts dictate their story. They chose different assumptions. They trusted the process, and their bodies followed. So I want to close with this. You are the one giving life to it all. You are the one deciding how everything goes. You are the one and only cause. The diagnosis is not the cause. The symptoms are not the cause. The facts are not the cause. You are. And when you really accept this, you hold the keys to complete freedom. So if you're facing something with your health right now, let this be your reminder. Nothing is final. Nothing is set in stone. The future is open. Choose the assumption of radiant health, trust the process, and let your body do what it knows how to do. Because you're not here to live in fear. You're here to live in freedom, in vitality, and in joy. So go ahead, assume radiant health, trust it, and watch your body transform in a way that matches that story. Right, that is it from me for today. If this resonated with you, I'd love to hear your reflections in the comments, especially if you've experienced a shift in your health by changing your assumptions. And if you know someone who needs this message right now, please share it with them. Remember, facts don't have meaning in themselves. It's your assumption that writes the story. And you always have the choice to write a beautiful one. Thank you for watching. Take care, and I will see you in the next video. Bye for now.